Price Can Eat, a subsidiary company of M. Price Can Read, and I am M. Price. Today, yeah, you better believe I'm watching my bag crinkling. We have Arbys, and we're going to discuss a topic that is brought about by eating Arbys, and that is violence. I got my little Arby's drink here, root beer filled, of course. If I'm ever getting a pop, because I don't really like pop. Sorry, trying to find I never know how to open these things quietly. It's either root beer, or if I'm feeling really frisky, I get a Dr. Pepper. Oh yeah. Yeah. You like that, don't you? Root beer. I don't know, not one of the good brands. Whatever. We got our Beagle towel to help us get through whatever's lurking in that bag. And let's see what we got. We got the curly fries, which W. Price tells me are good. We have the mozzarella sticks, which M. Price's memory tells him are good, but in actuality, M. Price knows they're not. Some marinara. I see no other sauces in there. That's unfortunate, but acceptable. Please be silent. Please be silent. I don't want someone kicking my ass in the comment section again. Whatever. Let's pop this marinara open, and yes, I'm in kind of a rush to get to the mozzarella sticks because they get very hard and stale rather quickly. So, mozzarella, stick it up. Yeah, mozzarella. Okay. Pretty good so far. I guess I live closer to an Arby's than I do a Wendy's. As you'll possibly remember in my last video, when I did go to Wendy's, all my food was cold by the time I got home. Rearranging here. Curly fries can use some ketchup, which I have. I've returned with the ketchup. Fairway, of course. I never know what to do. Okay. And yeah, I think I do get a little more unhinged every video I make of these. But that's okay. That's kind of what you expect, isn't it? Let's see if they get better with the ketchup. Oh yeah. But violence. There's always this plethora of violence on the news. You know, it's always these stories about these, gun violence or violence on the road, violence in other countries. And it just kind of makes you wonder, at least it makes me wonder, who is this for? Like, if there is a shooting halfway across the country. What's the point, really, of having this big, almost kind of like yellow journalist style, like, story about it? Because it's like, well, what can you do to even, like, it already happened. It's not like you can prevent it. It's not like you can reverse time. It's just a sort of mainline suffering that's being turned into entertainment, if that makes sense. I just don't really understand the news. I understand the news in this, like, from the viewpoint of gotta keep informed about, like, the economy or diplomacy or stuff like that. But when it comes to just, grisly, like, true crime-esque, just horrors that are being broadcast from around the world. Who is this for? Is this supposed to be entertainment? Like, who's just casually watching that? And the more I think about it, the more I think that it is a sort of entertainment. Our news has sort of become our preferred form of media. And it's like, maybe not preferred, but they certainly correlate way too much. And what I mean by that is, like, it's becoming too much like a movie. Too much like it's explicitly meant to get a reaction out of the audience, out of the viewers. And that reminds me of a movie from a long time, but not really a long time ago, the 60s, 70s era, around the era people call New Hollywood in America. And the movie is The Wild Bunch. Now, The Wild Bunch was one of the most, if not the most violent movie ever made when it came out. And that was the point. The filmmaker was explicitly trying to make a movie so violent and so gory and bloody and disturbing that, thank you, Motorcycle Man, that it would basically kick people off of this need for more violent movies. Because at that point, movies were getting more violent, more sexual, more vulgar. And and he didn't like it, and he wanted to essentially scare people away from it. And the reverse happened. The Wild Bunch became a huge hit, and people loved the violence. People thought it was just as cool as can be and wanted more like it. And here, he is basically being like, what have I created? What have I wrought? And from there you get more modern shows and movies, and someone really has it out for me, don't they? You get more modern shows and movies, like a Game of Thrones, which is all about, incest, assault, beheading, goring the main characters, just all this horrible, horrible stuff. There's not really a lot of meaning to a Game of Thrones, Like Lord of the Rings has all this beauty and meaning and purity and all these amazing aspects that are sort of underlying the story. Though, Tolkien claims that, it was made without allegory, but it's pretty clear that his experiences, in the very violent World War I affected his writing. But then we have a Game of Thrones, which, to me at least, is just, like, basically pornographic in its depiction of all this, just constant unrest and torment. And yeah, I get that it's based off of, like, it's supposed to be based off of, like, real-life European wars. But, like, why? Why is it entertaining? Why do we need to be enthralled by all this violence, all this hatred, all this, this filth? wish it weren't so. I wish that you could have peaceful, uplifting, celebratory pieces of art and not this, this just hopeless, nihilist, pointless, like, I don't know, just trash. But that's just me, I guess. It's okay, the mean, loud person has gone. I should probably actually dig into the sandwich I got at Arby's. It's like some bacon cheddar brisket thing. Yeah, very, very colorful, as you can see. I'll hold it up. Oh god, there goes the bacon. There's the bacon comes separately on there. Okay. Get back. Get back. But yes, very, very colorful, very whimsical, very beautiful sandwich. Let's take a bite. Actually, it's pretty good. Messy as all hell, but let's get this beef that's trying to escape here. Will soon be escaping my bowels. And I can't help but think that this fascination with this sort of increasingly escalation of violence, this desensitization. Why did I just have whatever? Is caused by this sort of normalization of violence. Oh, I thought that was a good tater tot for a second. It's just a very densely packed fry. This normalization of violence is caused by our public figures. Because all throughout the political spectrum, on all sides, on all levels of class, you'll see that these populist figures have risen. And basically, so many of them just spout crazy nonsensity, just bullshit, basically. And I can guarantee that they don't believe half the stuff they say anyway, but they say it because that's what keeps them popular and relevant. And it's almost this dangerous game of escalation where person A has to say something to get them this high. Well, then someone else will say something to get them this high. Well, now this person wants to be the top again, so they have to say something to get them this high, It's this sort of dangerous game of basically destroying everyone who looks at you, because kind of like how they only believe half the stuff they say, like half the people who see them believe everything they say. There are the people who kind of watch them with this passive, lurid fascination, like myself. But there are people who are like they're mindless zealots and will say, let's follow that lunatic, and let's follow that lunatic. And then it just becomes okay. Everyone's bad behavior becomes the norm. And that's not good. Because humanity deteriorates for it. The IQ level falls every year. The usage of medication and mental health goes up every year. Drug use goes up every year. Wealth goes down every year. It's almost like humanity is deteriorating before our eyes. And there is something to be said for just the pessimistic sentiment of the day that every generation has its problems and every generation probably perceives its struggle as the most important struggle in history. And I think this may be ours, just this idea that everyone is becoming so numb to everything around them that we're just sort of turning into husks of humanity. So I'd like to read you some excerpts about violence that show how dangerous it is and that show how, as if you didn't know. Yeah, what a stupid thing to say. I'm going to show you some excerpts about violence from the OG about violence himself, McCarthy. We're going to be looking at No Country for Old Men, which was made into that Coen Brothers movie about almost 20 years ago now. Jeez, I'm old. And then Blood Meridian, or The Evening Redness in the West, which is considered usually his best book. That or The Road, I guess. But we'll get to some excerpts here in a bit, because first I have to down some more of this mysterious sandwich. Which I'm now noticing has barbecue sauce on it. I wonder what the kitchen of an Arby's looks like. With other usual burger places, you can kind of assume, but how do they crank out this much roast beef a day? Must check my notes. Alright. No Country for Old Men, page 57. So the main antagonist of the story, his name is Sugar, and he is basically threatening this gas station attendant with a coin toss. He's not doing anything out in the open. He's just very subtly telling him he's going to kill him if he fails a coin toss. And the gas station attendant wins, and Sugar decides to let him live and tells him, after warning him, hey, don't put the coin in your pocket, keep it with you, that way you know that this is your special coin. He tells him this very chilling statement here. Anything can be an instrument, Sugar said. Small things, things you wouldn't even notice. They pass from hand to hand. People don't pay attention. And then one day there's an accounting. And after that, nothing is the same. Well, you say, it's just a coin. For instance, nothing special there. What could that be an instrument of? You see the problem. To separate the act from the thing. as if the parts of some moment in history might be interchangeable with the parts of some other moment. How could that be? Well, it's just a coin. Yes, that's true, is it? And while that may seem like the unhinged ramblings of a madman, I think there is some truth to it. It seems almost prophetic that the coin and the violence he was about to inflict upon the man, along with the coin, were sort of journeying through all those years, all those decades to get to them, to get to that little dime store counter and that cash register and that pocket, that everything, that it had been traveling for all this time. And while it seemed inconsequential, just a coin, it quite literally decided life and death. And it makes me think what violence out there is in store for me, or for you, or for anyone else on this world. What events have been set in motion that can't be set on in motion. So what happens when I don't write a script, okay? But what is happening right now, maybe in the same city, in a different city, in another part of the world? What events are happening right now that will go on to affect my life for the better or for the worse? Things that I can never know and things that I can never change, you know? A more positive spin of that would be like, say you're a man and when you're 30 years old, you meet the woman who will become your wife. And you're both the exact same age, you're both 30. Well, it's not like she just appeared. She was, moving around for 30 years, going to her own cities and towns and having her own experiences, meeting her own people. And it is only at this moment that you run into each other on this great, four-dimensional axis of life. Well, what's happening right now that you don't know about, that you might not know about for 10, 20, 30 years? And that's what I think about when it comes to these images of horror that are always displayed on our TV screens and our phone screens that, we can just switch off at the flick of our finger as if it's just a video game and not real life, What is happening right now that we're all going to pay for years down the road, and what will be the repercussions for this, this pornographic obsession with violence that at least I perceive in my pretentiousness. Yeah. Speaking of pretentiousness, I guess, one more mozzarella stick before it's totally rock hard. I think it might be. It's not very warm. Just in time. I can feel my heart slowing already. Look, they actually pressed the root beer button on the lid. That's fun. Usually people don't do that, but can I get a room temperature count for the French fries here? Sorry, curly fries. I just knew someone would point it out if I didn't point it out myself. But to the next section. This is from Blood last page, actually, page 348. This is the last paragraph, so spoiler alert, but not like it really makes a difference because the book is pretty vague and mysterious as it is. I don't know if this would even make sense as a spoiler. But there's this kind of, it's hard to say he's a bad guy because pretty much everyone in any Cormac McCarthy book is a bad guy. Except for like the child in the road, you know. This is the last paragraph. And this big, fat, hairless white guy named the judge is dancing. And it says, and they are dancing, the board floor slamming under the jackboots and the fiddlers grinning hideously over their canted pieces. The burp sound effect is in. I did it right. And there were two. Towering over them all is the judge, and he is a naked dancing, his small feet lively and quick, and now in double time, and bowing to the ladies, huge and pale and hairless, like an enormous infant. He never sleeps, he says. He says he'll never die. He bows to the fiddlers and sashays backwards and throws back his head and laughs deep in his throat. And he is a great favorite, the judge. He wafts his hand, and the lunar dome of his skull passes palely under the lamps, and he swings about and takes possession of one of the fiddles, and he pirouettes and makes a pass, 2 passes, dancing and fiddling at once. His feet are light and nimble. He never sleeps. He says that he will never die. He dances in light and in shadow, and he is a great favorite. He sleeps, the judge. He is dancing, dancing. He says that he will never die. For those who don't know, this story is predominantly about sort of a Dark West tale of the scalping business in, early America, when people traded like human scalps for money and all that fun stuff. Not very pleasant. And the judge is kind of this perennial figure of pure manifested evil throughout the novel. And at the end, he's just reveling in his own, his own absolution, his own destiny, as he knows that he will be forever, forever dancing, as he says. He knows that no one can stop him because at this point he's sort of become a symbol of violence and evil himself. And to me, that just goes to show you that violence is eternal, and that you have to do something to combat it. It's something that should be taken seriously, not something that's like, it's just, kids watching a violent TV show, or it's just people on the news. Like, no, it's like a very serious thing that has severe consequences mentally and emotionally, socially, as a species. It's not a game. I'll take some more of my sandwich here. Maybe finish it up even. Anyone interested in the sort of dark side of humanity, I highly recommend Cormac McCarthy because he depicts it in a more raw, holistic, genuine sense than if you're watching a TV show, someone will pull out their gun and shoot somebody and their head will explode in a fountain of blood, and it's almost cartoonish the way that violence is depicted there. And so many, the common piece some people would call him gritty, but gritty is such an overused and at this point meaningless sort of characteristic of film or books or anything. McCarthy is just like real, and you read his work and it's just chilling because you know that there's nothing, heroic or stylish or fancy free about this. It is just pure, just like biblical levels of evil. Speaking of biblical levels of evil, why did Burger King take away the BK stacker? Why? Do you know how many stackers I would be eating on YouTube if they were still a feasible option? At least I'll always have you, root beer. To page 54 for a pretty big section. Oh, yes. Hold on to your butts. This is what I mean by real. I almost said gritty, but it's not gritty, remember. It's genuine. It's powerful just like that burp. Matter of fact, I think I need some water after that. Quick to my emergency water. I can't let you see my mug. Okay. The main character is hanging out, doing his stuff on the plains, and all of a sudden a legion of horribles descends upon him. The first of the herd begun to swing past them in a pall of yellow dust. Rangy, slat-tribbed cattle with horns that grew a goggle and no two alike, and small thin mules coal-black that shouldered one another and reared their mallet-shaped heads above the backs of the others, and then more cattle, and finally the first of the herders riding up the outer side and keeping the stock between themselves and the mounted company. Behind them came a herd of several hundred ponies. The sergeant looked for Candelario. He kept backing along the ranks but could not find him. He nudged his horse through the column and moved up the far side. The lattermost of the drovers were now coming through the dust, and the captain was gesturing and shouting. The ponies had begun to veer off from the herd, and the drovers were beating their way toward the armed company met with on the plain. Already you could see through the dust on the ponies' hides, the painted chevrons in the hands, and rising suns, and birds and fish of every device, like the shade of old work through sizing on a canvas. And now, too, you could hear above the pounding of the unshod hoofs, the piping of the quena, flutes made from human bones, and and some among the company had begun to saw back on their mounts, and some to melt in confusion when up from the offside of those ponies there rose a fabled horde of mounted lancers and archers, bearing shields bedight with bits of broken mirror glass that cast 1,000 unpieced suns against the eyes of their enemies. A legion of horribles, hundreds in number, half naked or clad in costumes, attic or biblical or wardrobe out of a fever dream with the skins of animals and silk finery, and pieces of uniform still tracked with the blood of prior owners, coats of slain dragoons, frogged and braided cavalry jackets, one in a stovepipe hat, and one with an umbrella, and one in white stockings and a blood-stained wedding veil, and some in headgear of crane feathers or rawhide helmets that bore the horns of buffalo or bull, and one in a pigeon-tailed coat worn backwards and otherwise naked, and one of the armor of a Spanish conquistador. The breastplate and pauldrons deeply dented with old blows of mace and saber done in another country by men whose very bones were dust, and many with their braids spliced up the hair of other beasts until they trailed upon the ground, and their horses' ears and tails worked with bits and brightly colored cloth, and one whose horse's whole head was painted crimson red, and all the horsemen's faces gaudy and grotesque with daubings like a company of mounted clowns, death hilarious, all howling in a barbarous tongue, and riding down upon them like a horde from hell more horrible, yet than brimstone land of Christian reckoning, screeching and yammering and clothed in smoke like those vaporous beings in regions beyond right knowing, where the eye wanders and the lip jerks and drools. "Oh my God," said the sergeant. A rattling drove of arrows passed through the company, and men tottered and dropped from their mounts. Horses were rearing and plunging, and the Mongol horde swung up along their flanks, and turned and rode full upon them with lances. The company was now come to a halt, and the first shots were fired, and the great rifle smoke rolled with the dust as the lancers breached the ranks. The kid's horse sank beneath him with a long pneumatic sigh. He had already fired his rifle, and now he sat on the ground and fumbled with his shot pouch. A man near him sat with an arrow hanging out of his neck. He was bent slightly, as if in prayer. The kid would have reached for the bloody hoop iron point, but then he saw that the man wore another arrow in his breast to the fletching, and he was dead. Everywhere there were horses down and men scrambling, and he saw a man who sat charging his rifle while blood ran from his ears, and he saw men with their revolvers disassembled trying to fit the spare loaded cylinders they carried, and he saw men kneeling who tilted and clasped their shadows in the ground, and he saw men lanced and cut up by the hair and scalped standing, and he saw the horses of war trample down the fallen, and a little white-faced pony with one clouded eye leaning out of the mark and snapped at him like a dog and was gone. Among the wounded some seemed dumb and without understanding, and some were pale through the masks of dust, and some had fouled themselves or tottered brokenly onto the spears of the savages, now driving in a wild frenzy of headlong horses with eyes walled and teeth cropped, and naked riders with clusters of arrows and clenched in their jaws, and their shields winking in the dust, and up the far side of the ruined ranks in a piping of bone flutes, and dropping down off the sides of their mounts, with one heel hung in the weather strap, and their short bows flexing beneath the outstretched necks of the ponies until they circled the company and cut their ranks in two, and then rising up again like a funhouse figure, some with nightmare faces painted on their breasts, riding down the unhorsed Saxons and spearing and clubbing them, and leaping from their mounts with knives and running about on the ground with a peculiar bandy-legged trot, like creatures driven to alien forms of locomotion, and stripping the clothes from the dead, and seizing them up by the hair, and passing their blades about the skulls of the living and the dead alike, and snatching aloft the bloody wigs, and hacking and chopping at the naked bodies, ripping off limbs, heads, cutting the strange white torsos, and holding up great handfuls of viscera, genitals, some of the savages so slathered up with gore they might have rolled in it like dogs, and some who fell upon the dying and sodomized them with loud cries to their fellows. And now the horses of the dead came pounding out of the smoke and dust, encircled with flapping leather and wild manes, and eyes widened with fear like the eyes of the blind. And some were feathered with arrows, some lanced through, and stumbling and vomiting blood as they wheeled across the killing ground, and clattered from sight again. Dust stanched the wet and naked heads of the scalped, who with the fringe of hair below their wounds, and tonsured to the bone now lay like maimed and naked monks in the blood-slaked dust, and everywhere the dying groaned and gibbered, and horses lay screaming. Sorry, I just read for like 10 minutes straight, but it was necessary. But that's the kind of violence I'm talking about. That's the kind of violence that I'm about to fucking inflict on whoever these people are outside who are making noise. And that's the violence that, to me, is the destiny of humanity if we just continue on this route. You know, like I said earlier, it's like it's not even real anymore. People can take out their personalized pocket computers and just flip on a war and watch people in real time shooting missiles at each other, trying to exterminate entire ethnicities, and just be like, oh, whatever, and flip right back to Instagram. Like, why? There are going to be psychological repercussions for this, and people just seem content with it. People just seem like, oh, whatever. At least the new iPhone's coming out next week. Not good, I say. So then what's the solution for this? Stretch, by the way. Oh yeah. Where do we go from here? How do we combat this? I would certainly like some advice. I guess all we can do is finish up our sandwich right now, isn't it? Because I have the microphone gauge that only picks up sound right here. But sometimes if it's loud enough, it does pick up other things. And I'm just wondering, like, am I just insanely looking out the window like a maniac? And you're just like, oh, what are you even talking about? Well, suffice it to say, it's pretty noisy outside, and I'm concerned about you, the listener, and I want you to be happy. If you've made it this far, because I'm on like 40 minutes in now. And if you have made it this far, thank you. And I'd greatly appreciate it if you let me know, like, why. You know, because I want to be better. I want to optimize my videos to make you all very happy. Oh, God. So, like, what do you want more of? What do you want less of? Do you prefer fast food or the food I make? Do you prefer happy topics or sad topics? Or better yet, do you prefer morally ambiguous topics? Because you know that codes of ethics are just subjective rules that are on a case-by-case and an individual basis. Oh yeah. universal truth. Woohoo. And it's not just like noise outside, it's like people just stomping in the hall or in the stairs. It's like you can walk slowly, man. It's not that hard. But what do I know? Who am I to judge? So, I'll just leave you. And I actually finished my meal this time too. Yeah, I'm like out of fries. Good for me. Last fry. And last sandwich. But yeah, please let me know. Open to all and any criticisms. Root beer. Alright, well, I think that's about it for us today. Thank you for joining me and Price on our magical edition of M. Price Can Eat, a subsidiary company of M. Price Can Read. I feel very sick right now, but that's okay because I'm making butternut squash curry tonight, and I know that will not fill me up. So at least I have all this Arby's meat to last me throughout the rest of the day. As always, Dog City never sleeps. I hope that you may sleep and don't watch